Welcome everybody. Thanks Sam Shargo from Images to join us today. And this is going to be awesome. I know that. Why I know that? Like we are going to talk about today meetings and how meetings suck and how to make meetings better. And I had a chat with Sam before, and he sent me a couple of like telltale signs why meetings suck and why people hate meetings. And I realized immediately that I'm doing this. Like people hate my meetings. And I was able to kind of use his little method over the last couple of days before this interview. And people said like, hey, Dinesh, you have like this meeting really organized. So it's really easy to do something, but it was a big aha moment for me that like I do like 20 meetings a week, and how I made other people's life miserable, that was painful. So tell me, Sam, why actually you are so passionate about that, and thanks for this little wisdom you had, because it was really practical to go through, honestly.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, Danish. Well, I think you would agree that everybody hates meetings. There's not one person in any company, anywhere in the world.
Now, I know why people in my meetings hated meetings. Now I know that exactly.
Yeah, I mean, meetings are unproductive. They're boring. They are not conclusive to actually getting anything accomplished in the organization. I mean, it's a disaster. It's a disaster for everybody across the board, right? So it's a problem that I think is very near and dear to everyone in any company anywhere in the world. And just a couple of interesting stats that I picked up here to illustrate that point further. 15% of time in organizations is actually spent in meetings.
15,
15%.
Like one day, almost one day a week.
Basically. And you know, if you're in the world of consulting like I am, you spend a lot more time than that doing meetings with clients and vendors and employees. The other interesting stat here is that executives consider 67% of meetings complete and total failures. And 71% of people say meetings are unproductive and inefficient, according to the HBR. Yeah, so it's a real problem.
Yeah, these are big numbers, Sam. Yeah.
Yeah. So you know, unproductive meetings they lead to frustration. They lead to miscommunication. And the thing about miscommunication is that it actually can create a bad reputation of your company. If you're miscommunicating things and one hand doesn't know what the other is doing, right? People don't think that you're a professional company. So it affects reputation. It also affects employee engagement. Another interesting stat here is actually in the United States, there was a poll done by Gallup, and what they found is that 85% of employees are actively disengaged in the workplace. That's a scary statistic. The amount of money that this is costing companies is frightening. And disengagement is really when someone views their workplace in a negative way, or that they're doing the bare minimum just to make it through the day with absolutely little to no emotional attachment or connection. So it's a significant drain on productivity for organizations.
And it's interesting you are raising these stats, and I think after this COVID thing and remote work, everything get way more sideways, because now you don't have the water cooler type of communication. You need to have these meetings. The attention span for people are way less when they have digital meetings, for instance. So everything gets worse.
Yeah. So if meetings sucked in person, now they suck even more.
Yeah, even more. Yeah, good one. Holy smoke.
And it's so important, right? It's interesting that you brought up that point, is that organizations need to have good communication in order to operate effectively. And whereas now everybody's working in a remote capacity, it is so crucial. Meetings is pretty much the primary way of making sure that people are moving in the same direction or on the same page and communicating effectively. So don't have a good meeting process, you're going to run into all these kind of problems, and they're just going to be accelerated even more so when you're running a virtual or remote team.
Wow. So Sam, I know you've been working on that a longer time. Like, actually, why you feel it's you want to stand out and speak up for these meetings thing? Why do you think it's important?
Yeah, well, like I said earlier, right? They say 50% of time is spent in meetings. For me, it was probably over 60% of my time was spent in meetings. And oftentimes it's just, you meet together with a group of people, you're chasing the information, you're not getting the right stuff done. There's no action items. I mean, it was a disaster, right? There's things falling through the cracks all the time, things that you thought communicated that people didn't understand the way you thought that you communicated to them. So it was a huge drain of my own productivity, and it was extremely frustrating. And I think it's frustrating for a lot of people. Like I said, when you spend so much time in meetings, it becomes a really big problem. So I thought, I got to do something about this. I'm a very process-minded person. And so I said, you know what? I think if we just come up with a good process for this, we'll be able to solve this problem once and for all.
And you know what, guys who are listening, like Sam gave me like a 3x3 little method. So it has like what to do before the meeting, what to do during the meeting, and what to do after or closing the meeting. That's a little framework of how to manage this process, and like 3 little tidbits in each. And guys, honestly, I just started using a couple of those, and that made actually visible feedback from people saying that I do better meetings. That was scary because it meant I did really bad without actually knowing that. That was like what was shocking to me. So let's, Sam, go through the first part, which is going to be what you should do before the meeting as a host to make sure that your meetings are going to be set up for success. So can you walk us through that little method?
Sure. So the first thing you have to consider is the audience and contribution of the people that are going to be in the meetings. Jeff Bezos actually has a pretty good rule. He's got a 2 pizzas rule with meetings. And what does this rule mean? It means that if you have more people in the meeting than 2 pizza pies can feed, then you have way too many people in the meeting. Now, this kind of rings true for in-person meetings, but same rule applies even for virtual meetings. And one of the reasons for this is the larger the team, the more people are involved, the lines of communication increase, and so complexity starts multiplying drastically. So the more people you have in that meeting, the greater the number of opinions you have in there, the more difficult it becomes to reach certain conclusions and actually make decisions, right? So you want to be mindful of the audience and who actually needs to be a part of this meeting. Some people don't actually need to be in the meeting. They just need to be informed about the outcome of the meeting. So that's a really important thing that you need to keep in mind. At the same time, if there's someone in the organization that can contribute something valuable to the meeting, then it's a good thing to consider to include that person in there, because it could avoid a lot of back and forth emails afterwards, additional meetings that have to follow to loop that person in. So really be mindful about who do you actually want in this meeting, right? And this kind of leads us to the next point, is that it has to be based on what is your objective. What are you trying to get out of this meeting? So you want to run your meetings in a way that's objective driven, not agenda driven. So what do I mean by that? Well, objective is very simply the outcome, right? What do we hope to achieve with this meeting? Are we meeting because we need to get an update on a certain project? Are we meeting because we need to discuss a specific issue? What is the actual objective here? And the agenda is more detailed in nature, right? And the agenda outlines all the different things that you want to discuss and specific details behind that. So it's not so important to get to every single item on the agenda, but it is important that we meet the objective that we set forth in our intention for that actual meeting. And the thing about the agenda and objective, you want to make sure you send this out in advance. You want to give people advance notice so that they know what is this meeting going to be about, and that they can actually prepare anything that they need to prepare in advance. So whether that be notes, reports, absolutely anything that would be helpful to make that meeting more productive, right? How many times people come into a meeting and they're scrambling to find certain information, pull up certain emails, documents, all this stuff. You want to make sure people come to the meeting prepared, and to do that, you have to give them advance notice about what is this meeting about, what do we hope to accomplish, and what is our agenda.
Let me chime into this. Honestly, I get those. I had quarterly business review meetings on this week. So what I learned about this was really the objective. And I was sitting there and try to kind of figure out, okay, what actually the outcome? Why we do this meeting? You know what was interesting? That was hard to figure out. I mean, it was eye opener how hard was to actually define. And what I realized, I had like 2 or 3 objectives for that meeting. So I had to say what's the objectives for the meeting. Oh, okay. Now I saw how much time do we have for those items, and then I was able to, based on the objective, I was able to create like an agenda. So an advanced notice. What I did was I just put it on the calendar invite. I put like objective 1, agenda points, objective 2, and I get back an email that, wow, that's good. Because it was just like the perceived value of what we're gonna do was like what was comfortable for the people. They kind of knew what's gonna happen, how much time we're gonna have, and they felt like actually some type of tangible results will be coming out. It was so simple, but like that was big eye opener. And I don't know. I'm sorry. I have 2 degrees, master degrees. I never learned that in university. Sorry. So it's like it's common sense, but it's really not a common practice.
Yeah, it's very true, and that actually brings up a really good point. Nobody likes surprises, right? Everyone wants to know kind of what can they actually expect and how to best be prepared for it. One of the things that also happens oftentimes is organizations operate in these little micro silos, and you have some teams that, oh, we like to use GChat, or someone else likes to use WebEx or GoToMeeting. I have different people sending out meeting invites using different tools and different platforms, and then you get this confusion, like, oh wait, hey, are we meeting on WebEx, or are we meeting on Teams, or is this going to be on Zoom? Like, which app do I use? So the trick there is just pick one. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It really makes no difference which tool you use, as long as you pick one and you are consistent with it across the board.
And the other thing, what I wanted to about before the meeting, what I came up all the time is like, I have anxious, like one people, like I see a little green dot, like they accepted the meeting. Some of them didn't accept, some of them canceled, but sent back an email that, oh, they can come. And like, as a host, I have no idea actually who's going to show up. It's like this kind of technology thing. I'm not sure it's like I'm doing something wrong, but we are using G Suite and they are using Microsoft, whatever. So it's like not really an obvious answer for the host, actually, what's going to happen, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And some things you just have to kind of adjust to what the workflow is. But again, if you have like 100 different workflows, you're never going to figure it out. You're never going to get the hang of it. Not to mention technology changes so frequently, right? Even if you use one tool, Microsoft releases 5 updates a week, for example.
Yeah, and what was the other awesome thing for that is that I sent to a colleague this little objective, agenda, and notification rule. So we had a chat, and that was kind of shocking that we have fairly good processes in the organization, but we didn't have any process for meetings. And I actually spend more than 2 days in meetings in a week. And that was a kind of like interesting part. Is like, oh, never thought to actually have a process and some expectation inside the organization, what's the minimum requirements to actually set up a meeting. We are just setting up because that's an easy thing to do, right? So it's easy to pop up meetings and easy to do wrong meetings. And that's leading these 71% of the people saying like it's crap, right? So anything else for what to do before the meeting, before we jump into how to proceed the meeting?
Well, just to add on to your last point there, having an organization that runs a process is very good. It's important as you try to increase your operational maturity, right? But where are processes created? Oftentimes they're created in a meeting. So if you can get your process for meetings right, you will naturally start improving all the other processes within your organization.
Yeah, like how many times you see people even in remote meetings, you see them doing and checking emails and really distracted, right? And as a host, you actually can't really drive the meeting well if you're not preparing for the meeting properly. So that's like set up something for success or failure. So awesome. So move to the next. So we know what to do before the meeting. Make sure we understand who is going to be there. We set objectives, then agenda, and then send easily before the meeting so everybody's comfortable. Now the next is what to do during the meeting, like how to start the meeting, how to finish the meeting, how to make sure it's comfortable for everyone. So it's actually a great experience for them. So they want to be on my meeting because Danish's meeting is much better than the others' meeting. So I want to be that guy, right? So how to do that?
Absolutely. So during the meeting, first thing you want to do is you want to set the context to the meeting.
Okay.
Right. Once you've started that meeting, right, and hopefully you're starting on time, you want to give a quick introduction, right? Hey guys, why do we gather here? What are we trying to discuss here, right? Restate what is our objective, right? Go through our agenda. Hey, here's the things that we want to discuss or go through during this meeting. And if you have new people in this meeting that you're hosting, in terms of clients or vendors, you want to make sure you kind of go around and state everyone's roles, who everybody is, give it a little bit of quick introduction. Doesn't have to be too crazy, just to get people familiar and kind of break the ice a little bit. You wanna make sure it's a healthy and conducive environment, because that's going to be the base for how you're going to make this meeting really productive, right? So you want to make sure that everybody's going to be involved and actively engaged in the meeting. Right? Let them know that, hey, we're going to be meeting for an hour or 90 minutes, right? I really appreciate your time. Really appreciate your undivided attention during this meeting, right? Make sure that they are actually present, right? It's obviously much more difficult to do when they're remote, just like you mentioned. But just stating that helps set that tone from the get-go. The other thing that you want to do at the start of this meeting is you want to start recording the meeting. And so we'll talk about taking meeting notes and things like that, but you want to record it. Whatever tool you're using WebEx, GoToMeeting, Teams, Zoom, Slack, makes no difference, right? Most of these solutions have some sort of recording capability built into it. And so you want to make sure you take advantage of that. And that's a good way for you to go back and have a historical record and a trail of what was actually discussed in this meeting. It's very helpful, especially as you look to take meeting notes. My recommendation should always be taking meeting notes live, and my preference is to use a legal pad. Some people prefer to use OneNote or Evernote or Notepad or Outlook or Word document. Word documents are the worst for me. Yeah. But whatever you're using, right, you want to make sure you're taking those meeting notes, and you want to write down what are the things that are actually being discussed. What are the key decisions that we've come to? How oftentimes you're in a meeting, you're discussing an issue for 30 minutes, 40 minutes, decide on someone, then after the meeting ends, everybody forgets, okay, what did we decide on that thing? And then you have another meeting and talk about the same exact problem, the same exact issue.
You're just like, hey.
Yeah. And you want to also jot down, most importantly, what are the next steps, right? What's our action items? And when you're doing action items, it's really critical. Don't just write down, okay, this is the task. Who's owning that task? Right? And when you're in that meeting, you actually want to go through the motions and say, okay, here's the action item, here's the action item. You're going to own this part. Yes? Great. Agreed. So now there's no miscommunication. There's no finger pointing. You know, it's like every time you come out of a meeting, like when I used to have meetings like in a bad way without a process, come out of a meeting and they're like, okay, well, we have these things that we need to do, but well, who's doing it? Right? And then it's like, well, I thought Joe's going to do it, and Joe thought Eric's going to do it, and Eric thought Mary's going to do it, and at the end of the day, nobody does it, yeah. And it never gets done.
Yeah, but everybody's like, oh, the other guys have all the to-dos, and I'm good. Let me ask a couple of questions specifically here, because sure. So you said that set the context when you start the meeting. And what I found was that it's really important for people to kind of decompress what they've been doing. You have like multitasking, like 15 different threads in your mind. And that's why people can't really, blaze the eyes, because they are just processing many other stuff. And we started using this kind of saying, like 2 minutes, like have a like some positive, stuff like being work, like personal or whatever. And that start like everybody's contributing actively, which is like kind of cool. We use that from EOS suggestions. It's really working well. My question is that how you get, because I learned that like, and I'm having this little paper here because I'm using this paper on my computer to remind myself that when we do have a meeting, I should have way less than 50% of the talking time. And it's hard for me personally. And I think many leaders have the hard problem with that. What's your suggestion to actually be able to lead the meeting with questions and make sure people get, heard? Because that's engaging in a meeting when I'm listening is not that awesome, but when I'm actively interacting, that's better. But how you manage that? So any best practice you have for that?
Yeah, so I think one really important thing here is that you need to have someone that's facilitating the meeting.
Okay.
And having a designated facilitator makes sure that first of all, the meeting is running with structure, but also does exactly what you're talking about, Danish. They get people involved. They see someone's maybe a little bit too quiet, not providing input. They'll call them out in a polite way and say, "Hey, what do you think about this particular item or this specific issue?" And they do work to facilitate the conversation in the meeting. I do this with my EOS customers, EOS clients that I work with, facilitating their quarterly meetings, their full day sessions and level 10 meetings. And it's really, really effective, right? Having someone that's making sure that we're running the meeting on time, that we're following the agenda, we're meeting the objective of the meeting and getting everybody actively engaged and involved in the meeting. And at the same time, avoiding tangents, because tangents happen in every single meeting. Right? Where you start talking about an issue, then you go down some rabbit hole, start talking about some other issue that's completely unrelated. Before you know it, you're 30 minutes into that conversation. Now the meeting's over.
And let me jump into, because that's what you are saying is really, really true. And I just reminded, like, when we started the practice that I'm the host of the meeting, Sam, but we said I'm not leading the meeting, I'm facilitating. Holy smokes, for me, my attention, my processing power, my ability to read people is so much higher because I don't have to hold the structure of the meeting, follow the minutes and everything. The other thing is when we do have we are using like an open agenda with a clock, with a little tool that helps really to stay on focus, like not getting into the rabbit holes. Even you get reminded. So I believe, honestly, I'm not sure it's a best practice or not, but for ourselves, we found that leaders shouldn't be facilitating the meeting. Somebody else should, who is actually separately giving the structure and let people work inside the environment, not like creating the structure. I'm not sure what's your best practice for that, but for me as a leader, I found it super helpful that somebody else responsibility to make sure the meeting is going to be working well.
Yeah, it's a very interesting point that you bring up, and for most organizations, they find the same thing you found, is that it's better to have a third party, someone that's more neutral, coming in and facilitating the conversation, as opposed to being part of that conversation. But unfortunately, it's not always possible. You're not going to be able to hire a consultant to facilitate every single meeting you have every week, right? And so someone's got to take that ownership and take on that role. And I do that quite often, and it's a little bit tricky because you're wearing two hats,
yes,
basically, right? You're a meeting participant and you're a meeting facilitator. So you got to have someone that's really disciplined to be able to do that well. Otherwise, yeah, you become the meeting participant pretty much instantly, and then you forget about facilitating, and then you're the one creating the rabbit holes as opposed to keeping
and you can't get out of the rabbit hole because you are offended or something and you want to prove something wrong, or you are getting all the energies. And the other thing what I found, and we are talking about here in a sense of digital maturity and digital transformation, is that most of these meetings I found, like what you started saying about how we take meeting notes, how we manage notes and things like that. And I'm not sure what's your best practice, but what I found is that if we are seeing one screen where we have every notes and everything, that really focuses people like what was written down. Like, hey, I didn't say that. Like, really, I should do that. Wow. I'm not sure I have time next week. It's really good to actually people see that. I'm not sure what's your best practice for that, but and many tools out there, but it's just dead by apps. You have a specific tool for me. I don't know. It's like what's the best, honestly, for that. And I don't want to
Yeah,
have
yeah.
like people having meeting notes and they don't have time to jot down and send it back. Like the technology can kill this whole thing for sure. Not just
Absolutely. I call it Planet of the Apps.
yeah, it's like that by apps. Like I started
Yeah.
listening that it's just like so complex. Yeah, okay.
Well, I think, it goes back to what I said earlier, Danish, is that there's so many tools out there, and it really doesn't make a difference which tool you use,
Yeah.
as long as you use one that works, that makes the most sense and that works best for your team and for your organization, right? It can't be based on the technology that's out there. It's got to be based on your business and your company. And, we can certainly make recommendations, based on the kind of company you are and what else is out there within your ecosystem of technology. But at the end of the day, it's just being consistent with it, right? My own preference is I use OneNote, Microsoft OneNote, to take the meetings. But you brought up a very good point, and that's sharing your screen within the meetings and putting on the screen the actual meeting notes that you're taking. One really useful thing to do is to actually prepare the structure of those meeting notes in advance of the meeting. So you have the agenda written out, you have a section in there for the action items. I do like a little table, right? The task, and then the owner, and then the deadline of those action items. This way in the meeting, you can just focus on writing down the important stuff as opposed to being bogged down with the formatting and the structure.
Yes.
And getting people's eyes on it, now they're listening and they're seeing. So you've just significantly increased the likelihood that they're actually paying attention and being present in the meeting.
And what I found is the ownership when we do that together, Sam. Like Stephen Covey said once, like if there is no involvement, there is no commitment. When we do that together, that's our plan. That's going to be our plan, what we're going to do next or whatever. If somebody like summarize and just jot down who needs, oh yeah, it was his opinion, I don't care. Like probably I write back it wasn't the case or something like that. But yeah, it's really easy to carry the way and holy smokes, 5 minutes left and nothing get done. Yeah. Any other best practice for that section, like how to actually run the meeting?
Yeah, so final thing in there that I'll say is, in getting people involved, you want to make sure they're present and engaged. Have each task owner state the task in their own words. So if we're just having a discussion about something, we're saying, okay, we got to get this done, and Sue is going to do that. Hey, Sue, what should the task be? And Sue is now saying what is her task in her own words, in the way that she understands it. And everybody has eyes on it. And it really helps drive that accountability and ownership in the meeting.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because like what I wanted to make sure, because you made this whole thing so practical, that usually when you are having these type of meetings, like, yeah, you are an enterprise, big company, whatever. But when we are talking about like a 10, 15, 50, 60 people, like small businesses, it's still has to be some type of solution, and not like super crazy on meetings and not like having nothing for meetings. So I think what you have is a really great kind of foundation for both. So we prepared the meeting. So we knew who were there. We set objectives, agenda. We sent noticed advance. Awesome. Now we started the meeting properly, get involvement, recording the meetings, which is awesome. And then we took notes and kind of, have the end. how we can make sure the last part is going to be together, how to end the meeting and what to do after the meeting. So it's like a closed loop framework.
Yeah, absolutely. So concluding the meeting consists of a couple of pieces in here. And the first is you want to summarize, right? Usually about 5 to 10 minutes before the meeting is supposed to end. You want to make sure you end those meetings on time, just out of respect for everybody's time. So about 5 to 10 minutes before we conclude, the facilitator will usually go in and say, okay, here is the things that we discussed today, right? Boom, boom, boom. Here's the things that we maybe didn't get to, right? Maybe we need to have a separate meeting to discuss those items. Maybe someone just takes that down as an action item, right? And owns that task to follow up on that specific piece that we didn't get to. Because again, we're working with a finite amount of resources. Time is finite, right? We only have a certain amount of time allocated to the meeting. And we want to make sure we recap all the action items. So whoever's facilitating the meeting should go through all the tasks and say, okay, you have task 1, 2, 3, and 4. Do you agree? Are you able to get it done within that time frame, within that deadline that we've set forth here, right? And you get people's involvement again, right? Engagement is really important. Get them to agree and acknowledge and really own and be accountable for those tasks. And you wanna then go into having some sort of follow-up. So usually in the meetings that I run, there's usually some sort of follow-up meeting that needs to be taking place, right? And so this is a really good opportunity to eliminate a lot of frustration and back and forth emails on scheduling time.
Yep.
And while you have all the participants in the meeting, just ask them, hey, can everyone open up their calendars real quick and let's find a time for our follow-up meeting. And it's so much more efficient. You're going to spend 2 minutes doing that in the meeting as opposed to 25 emails over the course of 2 weeks, scheduling stuff back and forth, and it's just so painful for everybody.
That's really true. Now everybody calendar is pretty much full. Like everybody's using the calendar, everybody's conscious, everybody has like this weekly, like working, set up like proper time slots, and it's really hard to get into somebody's calendar. Yeah, that's true.
Absolutely. And this is a good example of, using the right mediums for communication. In this case, scheduling something. You already have everybody on the conference call or in the virtual meeting. Just spend 2 minutes figuring out a time that works, a day that works, and send out that meeting invite right then and there. Don't wait. Don't wait till tomorrow. Don't wait till you finish the meeting. Do it right then and there. Make sure everybody got it accepted. Great. We're finally done with the meeting. The last thing that you want to do is you want to get some feedback, right? So we do a thing. We also got this from the Entrepreneurial Operating System model to rate the meeting. So we ask everybody in the meeting on a scale of 1 through 10, 10 being the best meeting ever and 1 being the worst meeting ever, right? How would you rate the meeting? And we go around and everyone gives their number and their rating and just quickly ask, hey, what could we have done to make this meeting better? And use this as a learning opportunity. You don't take this as criticism, but use this as a learning opportunity to improve your meetings over and over again. Kind of goes back to, a continuous improvement philosophy and methodology, right? Taking a little bit from the world of agile, right? You want to have a closed loop and be able to improve future iterations of your work going forward. And so that's how we basically conclude the meeting. We would then want to, once we got everyone off the phone, send out that meeting recap email. All of those meeting notes in the meeting notes template that you've put together, have all those items in there, the things that we discussed, decisions that were made, any action items, who owns the deadlines, and hey, by the way, our next meeting is scheduled for this day for this time. Send that recap email out right away. As soon as you finish that meeting, don't wait, because if you wait, you're going to forget important details, important stuff that you may want to include in that email message. And then finally, if you have a meeting recording, if you did go ahead and record that meeting, give them access to that meeting recording so that everybody can access that. Especially useful if someone couldn't make the meeting but was supposed to make that meeting. They have access to the recording. They can go through it in their own time.
That's really good. Let me chime into a couple of things. One is the feedback. So we started using this feedback a while back, and when we did the meeting, I always asked why I didn't get 10. and they had to say why I didn't get 10, and I always get some really good feedback, like that was the timing or rabbit hole or this or that, but it was really always a legit stuff behind that. So it was really, really good. The other thing, what I learned about this concluding is, yes, concluding is, there is a chance like 15 minutes of this whole thing, because what we figured, Sam, was that if we had like a 1 hour meeting and we stretched the 1 hour meeting, nobody planned to actually do the follow-ups and everything. So everybody like, oh, and that never happened. But when we had like a 1 hour meeting and we planned to use only 45 minutes of the meeting, now people were able to kind of, zoom down and make sure everybody's like, scheduling the next one. We have time for this type of easing out the thing, and that is really, really helpful, not forcing to have something, that quickly done. So that was really a good one. And you made a joke before that, like when you gave a 10 for a meeting, what when did you once give a 10 for a meeting, Sam?
When it's canceled.
and I was laughing so hard because, like, actually it's kind of like that. Like, yes, if there is no meeting, that means a great meeting, right? So it just shouldn't be that way. So it was So the other thing about the recording, like what I found, or just like something that many times I found that the recording, when we put everything together, it's really hard to let people see that or know that. We do many client-related calls when we actually do want them to engage after a meeting, even somebody missed the meeting. What I use on the last couple of minutes when we close Zoom, I put up like a little screen share, and I really quickly in 4 minutes go through the main points. What was the meeting? What was the major point? What was the conclusion? And if you want, like, let's go to around 20-25 minutes, that when we are discussing that issue. And it was only 5 minutes for me. People watch that because that's just 5 minutes, but actually it gave them a lot of insights. Many times I felt like when we sent like a 60-minute complete recording, like, it's just people didn't go through well. So that's just like one little feedback for that. Okay, like technology wise, like how you can do that like faster, or what you see as how technology can help or hindering this type of conclusion process?
Yeah, so it really comes down to integrations and having and using tools that are integrated well together. There's, like we talked about earlier, right? There's so many different applications out there, and when they don't talk to each other, now you're going to be duplicating work, you're going to be copying stuff from one location to another location. And so Microsoft actually put together a really great ecosystem with Office 365, where you have all these tools built into the platform and that actually talk to each other. And so what we use ourselves and what we implement for our customers is Microsoft Teams to actually run the meeting. We use Stream to do the meeting recording, which is built into Microsoft Teams. OneNote, which is built into Microsoft Teams for the note-taking, right? And of course, Outlook to send out those meeting invites. At the end of the day, you just need to have a workflow that's streamlined and that's clear on how do we do this process and how do we do it consistently every single time. And so just being smart about the tools that you're using and that you're implementing across the board, the time savings that you'll have when these tools can actually talk to each other and are integrated well is tremendous. So that's my take on the tool set for meetings.
And that's interesting because what you are saying is just basically habits, how to create like one workflow and make sure that's going to be repeatable, not like trying to figure out every day differently and then it never gets together. So that is the three major things. So before the meeting, during meeting, after the meeting. So I would like you to just kind of wrap this whole thing up. Like, I learned a lot from here is like, it's a simple thing. But can you just go through again, like in 2 minutes, like what the hell is the problem here? and actually what to do with it, because I do believe it's like as I was shocked after going through that. It's how other people perceive me as a professional, how I'm doing meetings, and I did not take it as a consideration of like I'm doing that good or bad or anything. It's really kind of a banded mirror or something like that. So yeah.
Sure. So the basic premise here is that meetings are extremely frustrating and completely unproductive for a lot of companies, right? But it doesn't have to be that way. If you create a process that's simple, straightforward, and is consistent, you're going to drastically improve your meetings. You're going to improve your productivity. You're going to get people actively engaged in the conversation. You're actually going to get stuff done, right? And the process is very simple here. You want to make sure you have good preparation before that meeting. You want to make sure you have the right people attending that meeting that are going to be contributing in that meeting. You want to have a facilitator that's actually leading the conversation and making sure people are engaged, staying on time, staying on track. You want to have objectives and an agenda. You want to have both, but you want it to be objective driven, not so much agenda driven, right? We want to focus on the outcome of our meeting. And you want to give people advance notice so that they can prepare for that meeting ahead of time, whether it's preparing reports, notes, issues, emails, documents, whatever that may be. During the meeting, you want to make sure you set on that context. You're getting people involved. You're making introduction. You're doing a quick icebreaker for everybody, right? You're creating a healthy environment for a productive meeting, recording it, taking good notes, having clear action items, owners, again, getting people involved with figuring out what those action items need to be and when they're going to be done by, summarizing that meeting, and getting rating and feedback on how can we make this kind of meeting better in the future and have continuous improvement for your meeting rhythms. Send out those meeting notes upon concluding that meeting. Make sure you have a follow-up meeting scheduled for the next time you go in to meet with these individuals. And that's basically your meeting process in a nutshell.
That's perfect, because it has the components and has the tools in line. And if you do that better, basically your productivity goes up. You probably get less meetings, but it's way more productive. People feel meetings actually somewhere they have to bring things, and they are not sending on issues all the time by emails, but they are waiting and they are raising that on meetings because they understand that. Sam, that's really profound, and I wanted you to create like a little one-pager for that, so it's going to be available later as a companion here. And I know you are working on like a presentation as well to actually how to make that happen. But people want to make sure understand this digital transformation and like how to do better meetings. Digital Maturity Group already has created a mini questionnaire for digital maturity assessment, which is basically you can guys go through 7 different aspects of digital transformation, digital technologies, how you actually can get ahead of the curve. And our advisors are happy to jump in a call with a properly set up meeting to go through with you and make sure you get numbers down and benchmark, and you are able to make decisions about that. And thanks for you, Sam, one of our advisors, to taking time to put something together for the community, because I do believe this is really a big, it's a little lever we can, shift a little bit, and that's really pushes a ton of value forward. So Sam, thank you again. That was an awesome meeting, and see you guys on the next session. Thank you very much.
Thank you.